The morning began like any other glossy network broadcast, bright lights and practiced smiles masking the tension simmering just beneath the surface. Sylvester Stallone appeared on the CBS Morning Show to promote what was framed as a reflective career discussion, but viewers quickly sensed something was off. His posture was rigid, his answers clipped, and the usual charm he brings to interviews felt restrained, as if he were bracing for impact. Gayle King, seasoned and calm, guided the conversation forward, unaware that a single question would soon ignite an exchange no one in the studio expected. As the discussion shifted from Stallone's latest project to his long Hollywood journey, Gayle King posed a question about criticism he has faced over the years. It was phrased politely, yet it touched a nerve that had clearly been raw for a long time. Stallone's expression changed instantly, the warmth draining from his face as he leaned back in his chair. The studio audience fell unusually quiet, sensing the emotional shift before a word of protest was even spoken. Stallone responded slowly at first, choosing his words with visible effort, but the restraint didn't last. He spoke about being misunderstood, about decades of being labeled and boxed in by critics who never lived his experiences. His voice grew firmer, the frustration unmistakable. Gayle attempted to redirect, reminding him of the admiration he receives worldwide. But Stallone was already committed to finally saying what he felt had been left unsaid for years. What followed was less an outburst and more an emotional release that had been building across a lifetime in the public eye. Stallone explained how interviews often focus on controversy rather than craft, conflict rather than contribution. He questioned why personal narratives are repeatedly reshaped for headlines. Though he never raised his voice excessively, the intensity in his delivery made every sentence land with force, leaving Gayle momentarily silent as she processed the unexpected turn. Gayle King, known for her composure under pressure, attempted to interject with context, emphasizing that the question reflected public discourse, not personal judgment. Still, Stallone pushed back, clarifying that public discourse is often driven by media framing. He argued that narratives gain power through repetition, and once established, they are difficult to undo. The exchange felt less like an interview and more like a reckoning, unfolding live before millions of viewers. Cameras captured every micro-expression as Stallone gestured lightly with his hands, a sign of agitation he rarely displays on morning television. He referenced past interviews where moments were taken out of context and replayed endlessly online. According to him, those fragments became louder than the truth. Gayle nodded, listening carefully, yet the balance of control in the conversation had clearly shifted. Social media began reacting in real time, with clips circulating before the segment even ended. Some viewers praised Stallone for his honesty, calling it refreshing to see a Hollywood icon speak without filters. Others felt the moment was uncomfortable, arguing that the show was not the place for such intensity. Inside the studio, the atmosphere remained tense but respectful, both participants aware of the fine line they were walking. Stallone then addressed the emotional toll of longevity in the industry, explaining how decades of scrutiny wear down even the thickest skin. He spoke about aging in Hollywood, about being compared endlessly to younger versions of himself. His words carried vulnerability beneath the frustration, revealing a man grappling with legacy rather than seeking attention. Gayle softened her tone, acknowledging the difficulty of sustaining relevance without losing authenticity. The conversation briefly returned to his new work, but the spark had already been lit. Stallone tied the project back to his personal journey, explaining how storytelling has always been his way of reclaiming control. He suggested that characters like Rocky resonated because they mirrored real struggles, including his own battles with doubt and dismissal. The passion in his voice made it clear this was more than promotion, it was personal truth. Gayle King attempted to close the loop by highlighting Stallone's achievements, listing awards, box office success, and cultural impact. While appreciative, Stallone redirected again, insisting that success does not erase hurt. He emphasized that acknowledgement matters, especially when narratives persist for decades. The exchange remained intense but never descended into disrespect, a testament to both individuals' professionalism. As the segment neared its end, producers could be seen signaling subtly, urging a wrap-up. Stallone noticed and commented briefly on time constraints, Half smiling as if aware of how far the conversation had drifted, Gayle thanked him for his candor, describing the discussion as important and honest. Stallone nodded, though his expression suggested there was still more he wished he could say. When the cameras finally cut, the moment did not end. Clips flooded platforms within minutes, framed by dramatic captions suggesting a fiery confrontation. Some headlines exaggerated the tension, while others praised the authenticity of live television. The truth, as usual, lived somewhere in between, shaped by perspective and personal bias. Fans quickly took sides, with longtime supporters defending Stallone's right to speak openly. They argued that his frustration was justified, pointing to years of harsh criticism and misinterpretation. Others defended Gayle King, noting her role as a journalist tasked with asking difficult questions. The debate highlighted the ongoing tension between celebrity vulnerability and media responsibility. Industry insiders weighed in as well, noting that live television leaves little room for editing or damage control. They pointed out that such moments, while risky, often become the most memorable and impactful. Stallone's appearance, planned as routine promotion, had transformed into a raw discussion about fame, perception, and emotional endurance. Stallone later addressed the moment indirectly through a social media post, thanking fans for their support without naming the show or host. His words suggested relief rather than regret, as if speaking out had lifted a long-held weight. Gayle King, for her part, maintained her usual professionalism, addressing the segment briefly and emphasizing respect for open dialogue. The network did not issue an apology or clarification, signaling that the exchange, while intense, stayed within acceptable bounds. Media analysts praised CBS for allowing the moment to unfold naturally, rather than cutting away. They argued that authenticity, even when uncomfortable, is increasingly valued by audiences tired of scripted exchanges. For many viewers, the moment humanized Stallone in a way decades of films never had. He was no longer just an action hero or cultural icon, but a man reflecting on the cost of visibility. His frustration resonated with anyone who has felt misunderstood or reduced to a simplified version of themselves. Gayle King's role was also reassessed, with some praising her restraint under pressure. She neither escalated nor shut down the conversation, allowing Stallone space while maintaining journalistic integrity. In an era of polarized media, that balance was not lost on careful observers. The incident reignited broader conversations about how interviews are conducted and consumed. Short clips, stripped of nuance, often fuel outrage without context. Stallone's comments, when watched in full, appeared less explosive and more introspective than headlines suggested. Media literacy advocates urged viewers to watch entire segments before forming opinions. They pointed out that confrontation sells, but understanding requires patience. Stallone's appearance became a case study in how easily narratives can be shaped by selective framing. Days later, the moment still trended, proving its cultural impact. Talk shows, podcasts, and online panels dissected every second, every pause, every inflection. Stallone's legacy was re-examined not just through his films, but through his words on that morning. For Stallone, the appearance marked the turning point in how openly he addresses criticism. No longer content with polite deflection, he seemed ready to challenge narratives directly. Whether this approach will continue remains to be seen, but the message was clear. Gayle King continued her work without visible change, reinforcing her reputation for grace under fire. The segment became another chapter in her long career of navigating difficult conversations with high-profile figures. The audience, meanwhile, was left with a rare glimpse behind the polished facade of celebrity interviews. The moment reminded viewers that even icons carry unresolved emotions, shaped by years of public scrutiny. As time passed, the intensity of the debate softened, replaced by reflection. Many viewers acknowledged that the exchange, while uncomfortable, felt genuine. It stood out in a media landscape often criticized for superficiality. Stallone's career, spanning generations, has always been defined by resilience. That morning, resilience took a different form, expressed through words rather than fists or cinematic triumphs. The CBS Morning Show moved on to its next episodes, but the ripple effect of that interview lingered. It became a reference point for discussions about authenticity, control, and emotional honesty on live television. In retrospect, the clash was less about conflict and more about communication. Two professionals approached the same topic from different angles, meeting briefly in a space of tension and truth. For viewers willing to look beyond sensational headlines, the moment offered insight rather than scandal. It revealed the complexity behind public personas and the delicate dance between interviewer and guest. Ultimately, the exchange served as a reminder that live television still has the power to surprise. In an age of scripts and sound bites, Sylvester Stallone's emotional stand with Gayle King became an unforgettable moment of unfiltered reality. In the days that followed, entertainment journalists continued to unpack the deeper meaning behind Stallone's words, noting how rare it is for a veteran star to openly confront long-standing frustrations on a platform designed for comfort and ease. Many pointed out that morning shows often rely on warmth and predictability, making Stallone's emotional honesty stand out even more. His appearance disrupted expectations, reminding audiences that even familiar formats can become unpredictable when real feelings surface without warning. Fans revisited Stallone's early career, drawing connections between his struggles as a young actor and the sentiments he expressed on air. Stories resurfaced about rejection, financial hardship, and being underestimated before his breakthrough. To many, his reaction on the show felt like an echo of those early battles, proof that success does not erase memory. Instead, it layers new experiences onto old wounds, shaping how moments like that interview unfold. Some commentators suggested the clash reflected a generational shift in how celebrities engage with media. Where once stars avoided confrontation to protect image, today's audiences often demand authenticity. Stallone's refusal to gloss over discomfort aligned with that shift, even if it unsettled viewers expecting light conversation. The moment challenged the idea that promotional appearances must always remain safe and controlled. Behind the scenes, producers reportedly discussed the balance between guiding conversation and allowing emotional space. Live television thrives on spontaneity, but it also carries risk. Stallone's appearance became an example used in media circles to illustrate how quickly tone can change when questions touch personal history. It reinforced the importance of preparation, not just with facts, but with emotional awareness. Stallone's fans continued defending him, emphasizing that his response was measured, not reckless. They argued that passion should not be mistaken for anger, and that his words reflected accumulated experience rather than a single moment of irritation. This perspective reframed the exchange as thoughtful resistance rather than an eruption, shifting how some viewers interpreted his demeanor. Others focused on Gayle King's role, highlighting her ability to remain present without escalating tension. Her listening posture and calm follow-ups demonstrated a seasoned interviewer's instinct to prioritize dialogue over dominance. Media educators praised her handling of the situation, noting that maintaining respect during emotional exchanges is a skill developed through years of experience. The moment also sparked discussion about how celebrity interviews are edited for replay. Short clips amplified the most intense seconds, often stripping away the context that softened Stallone's message. This selective circulation reignited criticism of viral culture, where nuance is frequently sacrificed for engagement and speed. Stallone's words about legacy resonated strongly with older viewers who related to being judged by outdated perceptions. His frustration mirrored broader societal conversations about aging, relevance, and respect. In that sense, the interview transcended celebrity gossip, touching on universal anxieties shared by many watching at home. Film critics revisited Stallone's body of work with fresh perspective, reassessing performances often dismissed in earlier decades. Some argued that the interview encouraged a more generous evaluation of his contributions, not just as an actor, but as a writer and storyteller who shaped iconic characters rooted in perseverance. The conversation also influenced how future guests approached live interviews. Publicists reportedly became more cautious, preparing clients for deeper questions even on lighter platforms. Stallone's appearance served as a reminder that any live setting can become emotionally charged when personal truth enters the frame. Weeks later, Stallone appeared at a public event where he briefly acknowledged the interview, expressing appreciation for honest conversations. His tone suggested acceptance rather than defensiveness, indicating that the moment, while intense, had been cathartic. Fans applauded his willingness to stand by his words without escalating controversy. Gayle King, asked about the exchange in a later interview, described it as part of meaningful journalism. She emphasized that respectful disagreement and emotional honesty are not failures of conversation, but evidence that dialogue still matters. Her response reinforced the idea that not all tense moments require resolution on camera. The incident gradually settled into pop culture memory as a defining television moment rather than a scandal. It joined a list of live interviews remembered for authenticity rather than spectacle. Viewers began referencing it as an example of how unscripted television can still feel alive and relevant. For Stallone, the morning show clash became another chapter in a career defined by defying expectations. Just as his characters often confront adversity head-on, he faced the moment with openness rather than retreat. That parallel was not lost on fans who saw the interview as an extension of his lifelong narrative. In the end, the exchange between Sylvester Stallone and Gayle King underscored a simple truth about live media: when real emotions enter the conversation, outcomes cannot be controlled. That unpredictability, while uncomfortable, is what made the moment linger, reminding audiences why genuine dialogue still holds power in an age of polished performances. As time passed, the Stallone-King moment began to be discussed in academic circles, with professors analyzing it as an example of media dynamics in the 21st century. Some pointed out that it reflected an evolving media landscape where audiences expect more from celebrities than just sound bites and rehearsed answers. Stallone's raw honesty contrasted sharply with the highly polished image many stars tried to maintain, making his outburst, if it could even be called that, feel both refreshing and revolutionary in a world dominated by filtered content. The moment was also dissected for its generational undertones. Stallone, a figure who rose to fame in the 70s and 80s, belongs to a generation that generally avoids showing vulnerability in public. His emotional reaction, in contrast, mirrored a cultural shift where showing feelings of whether joy, frustration, or sadness has become more normalized for both men and women. In this way, Stallone's emotional honesty was seen by some as a reflection of changing societal expectations surrounding masculinity and emotional expression. The aftermath of the interview was equally telling. For the first time in years, many outlets seemed to focus not just on the celebrity gossip but on the human being behind the star. The questions about criticism, aging, and the expectations placed on public figures made the moment feel like a deeper reflection on the human condition. Rather than a mere celebrity drama, it was a candid look into the psyche of someone who had been under constant public scrutiny for decades, and for many viewers, it felt like a rare glimpse into an actor who was no longer just sly but an individual with frustrations, regrets, and desires. Stallone's emotional reaction also stirred up conversations about the ethics of media questioning. Should journalists push harder for raw, unscripted responses? Or should they allow their subjects to maintain a controlled narrative? Some argued that Gayle King, by asking the tough questions, was simply doing her job, but others felt the boundaries had been crossed in a way that led to unnecessary discomfort for Stallone. The interview sparked a debate over the balance of respect versus provocation in media, with each side offering valid points about the line between authenticity and exploitation. It was impossible to ignore the way the moment became a talking point on social media. The viral spread of clips, often taken out of context, skewed public perception, showing only fragments of the interview's complexity. Many viewers found themselves drawn into online debates, with some siding with Stallone's frustrations and others criticizing his perceived outburst. Social media, for all its benefits in connecting people, also has a tendency to reduce nuanced moments into easily digestible bites. The interview, in this sense, became both an event and a case study in how information is consumed and interpreted in the modern era. Some of Stallone's fans, particularly those who grew up watching his films, expressed that they found his emotional response validating. For them, The interview provided a sense of closure on some of the long-standing rumors and criticisms that had followed him for years. His candidness helped humanize him in a way that his fictional characters, like Rocky Balboa and John Rambo, never could. It was as if the barriers between the legendary persona and the real person were finally beginning to crumble. Interestingly, the exchange also led to an increase in interest surrounding Stallone's personal life and past interviews. Media outlets began revisiting his career trajectory, from his early struggles as an actor to his rise as one of the most iconic figures in action cinema. Interviews from years past were re-examined with a new lens, as people began to reflect on how Stallone's persona had been shaped not just by Hollywood, but by his ongoing battles with public perception. For some viewers, the interview represented a departure from the traditional celebrity fluff typically seen on morning shows. Gone were the usual talking points about upcoming films, new projects, and innocuous stories about pets and hobbies. Instead, there was a level of emotional depth that caught everyone off guard. This shift in focus made the segment one of the more memorable interviews of the year, not just because of the controversy, but because it reminded viewers that celebrities, like all of us, are complex individuals. Gayle King, for her part, continued to defend the integrity of the interview. In a follow-up interview, she explained that her goal was never to create conflict, but to ask questions that prompted meaningful responses. She argued that as a journalist, it is important to ask the hard questions, even if they make people uncomfortable. Her perspective added an interesting layer to the conversation, suggesting that while emotions may have flared, the interview's ultimate purpose was to facilitate genuine discourse, not drama. In the aftermath of the exchange, the media's role in shaping public perception became a topic of much debate. Many commentators pointed to the ways in which certain interview moments were edited or framed to maximize engagement, even at the expense of nuance. The Stallone King interview served as a reminder of the power that media holds in crafting narrative as to whether those narratives are accurate, fair, or simply sensational. The viral moment also highlighted a cultural shift toward embracing authenticity over perfection. Celebrities, in a world dominated by social media and 24/7 news cycles, are increasingly expected to open up about their struggles and vulnerabilities. For Stallone, a man whose public persona was built on strength, toughness, and grit, his emotional response felt like a reclaiming of his own story. It was as if he were no longer willing to be defined solely by his on-screen heroics, but instead wanted to share his full, unfiltered truth. The interview also brought to the forefront the pressure on public figures to remain on brand at all times. In the world of celebrity, consistency in image and behavior is often prioritized above all else. Stallone's departure from that mold, particularly in such a public setting, was a radical act of self-expression. It opened up space for fans and fellow celebrities to reflect on their own public personas and the expectations they feel weighed down by. Fans who had always seen Stallone as a symbol of resilience now viewed him as someone who, despite his success, still grappled with the internal battles that all individuals face. His outburst, if it could even be described that way, revealed that he had not become immune to the same pressures, criticisms, and frustrations that anyone might experience. In many ways, this made him even more relatable, and his career, already filled with milestones, seemed to have gained even more depth. For a brief moment, the Stallone King interview transcended its status as a media event and became a social commentary. The tension between celebrity image and personal truth, between the world of public expectations and private struggles, was laid bare for millions to see. The entire exchange, in its messiness and honesty, illustrated how the personal and public spheres often collide in ways that are not easily predictable or controllable. As the months went by, the interview was frequently cited in discussions about celebrity culture and media ethics. It sparked a larger conversation about the responsibility of both journalists and celebrities in fostering more meaningful, open dialogue. For those who had witnessed the moment, it stood as a reminder that even in the world of polished, fast-paced television, there is room for vulnerability, real emotion, and genuine connection. Stallone's reaction, and the way it reverberated across the media landscape, also encouraged fans to rethink the narrative around aging stars in Hollywood. Rather than being written off as relics of a bygone era, figures like Stallone were increasingly seen as wise veterans of the industry, capable of offering new perspectives on topics such as fame, success, and the toll of public life. In many ways, the exchange represented a shift in how we view public figures, particularly those who have been in the spotlight for decades. Instead of focusing solely on their achievements, audiences began to see them as multidimensional individuals, capable of grappling with emotions and experiences that go far beyond what is seen on the big screen. It was a moment that humanized Stallone, transforming him from a larger-than-life action hero into a real person navigating the complexities of fame and its consequences. Finally, as the media cycle moved on to the next big story, the Stallone King interview became one of those rare moments in television history where a single conversation left a lasting imprint. It was a reminder of the power of authenticity, of how a raw moment can shift public perceptions and spark deeper conversations that echo long after the cameras stop rolling. And for Stallone, it was an unexpected but powerful way to reclaim his narrative, not through a scripted performance, but through the kind of honesty that only a live, unscripted exchange could evoke.